Welcome to the Pummel Spice Latte podcast.
Pummel Spice Latte.
I'm Sean.
I'm Peter. And this
is our guest.
This is our guest.
Wesley, or Rare Hunter.
Rare Hunter. Just give you a little background. We're all flesh and blood players. We're all pretty deep in here in our local scene. We're like in the elite group.
I'd probably say we're just like the guy, not like the guys in Vegas flesh and blood.
Yeah. We've got nationals like next a week from today.
Yeah, a week from today.
The nationals. How is your preparation going?
I think it's pretty obvious like what a lot of the top tier decks are. A lot of people are immediately going to go to Oldhim after Prisms got rotated out. I think Dromai is really hot right now. I think a lot of people like playing Icelander as well. I think those are like the three decks that I think a lot of people are going to dedicate their time to. Briar is also going to be on the edge. I think a lot of people are thinking Briar shouldn't have fallen that much. The actual like hypothermia difference basically in the Oldhim decks versus in that matchup versus Briar, I think it's going to be really big. I think the preparation going into it is really figuring out, are the aggro decks still good enough to play in this meta? I also think the rogue decks that are coming into it, I think like Reinhardt, I want to know if that Reinhardt's just getting destroyed by Oldhim, because that matchup in theory is supposed to be really good, and practice has been pretty bad most of the time. I know that the Malaysian Nationals was won by Reinhardt. I think Dash is really outside. I've been liking the control Dash variants a lot more. That are still playing like high octane tome. They are playing high octane tome for more of a mid range package, but they're just like, I'm gonna pistol shoot you and you're gonna die because you're playing a control deck, right? The deck traditionally loses against like pretty much every aggro deck in the format right now, but if you're not thinking people are gonna bring them, I think it's very good. People are probably sleeping on a couple of decks, Saber's Bolton, tier 1 deck, obviously the best deck in the format, but it's one of those things.
Would you say the best deck?
No, Saber's Bolton.
Oh, Saber's Bolton. We
all
love combo.
Yeah, Saber's Bolton is obviously the best deck in the format.
So Peter.
Yes.
How's your nationals preparation been going?
Yeah. What have you been doing specifically, Peter?
I have been playing Kana, specifically. Thought about it. I don't like any of the three decks that I thought were popular, so I am playing Kana. I think you have a lot of game into the top decks right now, even if they're traditionally should be bad for you. I think a lot of people aren't going to have the preparation for it as well, and if I put the preparation into beating those decks, I think I have a lot higher of a chance. And naturally, I have a good matchup versus Briar and Fi, because they're just like aggro formats. I think there's a lack of respect for like the middle of the pack decks right now instead of just the top three.
What about you, Wesley? I like what Peter's saying about how people are like not respecting the tier 1.5, tier 2 era decks, and they just think that like, oh, I should be on Dromai, oh, I should be on Oldhim.
About that, I do think that like U.S. Nationals is probably going to be the biggest nationals. So like probably
it is the biggest
300
nationals.
Plus players, I would say. In those odds, it's like I'm probably going to be playing one of the. There's going to be like two Kanos at least, right? Peter and
Alex Morris.
All right.
Yeah.
I did play against like two Kanos at the first Pro Tour with my amazing luck, but it's like I feel like you can only dedicate your time so much to practicing against some of the more fringe decks that sometimes I think you know your plan for the matchup and then hope that your plan is good enough.
Yeah.
So I think you just can't put too much effort into it when you know that I think U.S. Nationals will have a lot of Briar and Viscera players. The Runeblades will be very highly represented because it's just like what people enjoy playing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may not be the best decks, but they will be tier 1 in terms of representation.
Do you think one of these fringe decks, there's somebody who's devoted their time into playing those top matchups?
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say you're a Reiner player, right? You're practicing your matchups into Oldhim, you're practicing your Dromai matchup, you're practicing Dash, because that's always been Achilles there, and you're practicing into the Runeblades. And if you're spending all your time on that, do you think one of those decks has the chance to like spike the event? Like,
I've played pretty safe in my deck choices for a lot of like major events. Like PT1 played Chain, PT2 played Viscerai, I wasn't really thinking about playing. I've seen a lot of decks that I would have been like, yo, this would have been hella spicy to play, like it going into these tournaments. But I didn't really commit to any of them because I just really went with a safe pick. And I think that's a lot of people. I think a lot of people are just going to play the safe pick. And I think being on the side of playing the random deck that you have a lot of experience into, playing against the top decks in the format and like the mid-tier of the format that like nobody expects playing, I think that's going to give you a lot more percentage points, especially these days. Especially realizing that like anytime any like somewhat major event happens, everybody just flocks to that. I think I just want to be playing like that rogue deck that nobody experiences. That's also like my theory. Like I could go, I mean, it's beforehand. I could just go 0-4 and construct it on day one and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's
like,
another thing.
Like
it's just split format.
Yeah, it's a split format. I personally enjoy split formats. I know Wesley, you traditionally have hated split formats.
I just don't enjoy watching it. I think it's terrible for coverage, and it doesn't actually show like what CC deck is actually good.
Yeah. So the constructed classic decks, when and it's funny you bring this up because we had the Calling Utrecht.
Yeah.
And the winner of the European Invitational, which was the day before, which was only CC, had a slightly better version of Phi than the guy who won the Calling, who was on Phi and CC, but there was more limited or whatever, sealed and draft, which is interesting because, like you said, so if somebody goes 3-0, 3-0 in draft, but then they go 5-2 or whatever 4-2 in CC, they actually finished with a really good record, but their deck was only 4-2.
Yeah, it was okay.
And then people that don't know that look at the deck and they're like, "Oh my God, this dude went 10-2 in an event with this deck. It must be really good."
I think that's why you want to pick a safe pick for these dual format tournaments, because you just need a deck that can X2 your CC format, and then like you just go 6-0 or 5-1 in your 2 draft pods.
Yeah, you definitely want to go 2-1 in your first draft.
I think you at least have to, if you're not 3-0ing, you at least have to 2-1 in this format, especially because I think if you won 2 drafts, your day's over.
So if I'm just going to give advice, we just force Phi in both drafts. If you're
I'm like the opposite side of that spectrum, and I think I'm on the opposite side of what Wesley pointed out, just like having the safe like 2-2 pick in constructed. I think if I'm good enough drafting to get a 2-1 or 3-0 consistently, and I'm confident that I'm going to get a 2-1, 3-0, I should be okay playing a risky deck. I think being able to play a deck that will like maybe 1-3 or 4-0, I think is a lot better into this format.
Oh, it's X. Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Because are we playing 3 rounds and then 3 rounds of draft?
8 rounds of CC. Yeah. I'm combining them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, because I feel like I 2-1 draft, right, and then we have like the constructed portion. I need to be 4-3, so I need to win 2, right? But I don't want to be 4-3 going into day 2.
No.
To have to 7-0 to have a chance of making top. I need to be 3-1 in constructed or 4-0 because I need to be like at the least to like be live for top 8 and X2. So I need a 3-0 or 2-1 my draft, and then I go X1. Even if I say I 3-0 my draft and then I go 2-2 in constructed, I'm still on the X2 margin that I need to be at, and then I can drop 1 late going into top 8, right? So then I'm either 2-1ing my draft, and then I have to XO CC, or you have to 4-0. So I need to be probably at X1 to give myself the extra time into the draft, the insurance of 2-1ing.
Yeah.
I think actually, I might be contradicting with what you're trying to say, but I think if you think you're the better player for draft, which you've done really well in this draft historically, I think if you are 5-1 or 6-0 in draft, then wouldn't you want to just play something like Oldhim, who's going to guarantee like maybe give 2 losses? So you're basically just locked for top 8. Like this is your path. You're going to go 5-1 or 6-0 in your drafts, and then you just go like X2 or maybe even better.
Theory is good there as well, like because I'm going to be confident in like 5-1ing or 6-0ing this draft, right?
Yes.
And then
you just go for the lower variance.
Yeah, so you go the lower variance. Flush and Blood more rewards you to play the deck that you're more comfortable with as well, and say a chain was legal.
What are you talking about, bro? It never rewarded me for playing Leviathan. Not once. Not once, bro.
Maybe you played
That's a misnomer, bro.
Maybe if you played like a character that had any support at all.
Yeah.
In the game. Like,
as soon as I start playing good decks, homies are like, see? This is what
you started playing Fi. You just started playing Fi, and then you were just like, actually, like, everybody was like, damn, dude, Sean's having like a good month. And I was like, bro, Sean's a fucking good player. You just like need to play a relevant deck.
Not play Leviathan.
I think it's more like there's so many decks in this game currently that like you can play something of your style that has to be somewhere good, right?
Yeah.
I understand like I go 5-1 in limited, and then I play a safe deck to be there. I'd rather play a deck that I'm comfortable with, because I feel like a deck I'm comfortable with, I can have the same insurance.
I also like, as a player that plays Kano as well, I like the ability that there's a lot of control that you actually have when your opponent, like you said, maybe hasn't prepared enough or hasn't played enough into Kano, and like you can just put them in a position that they didn't realize they could get in, where you're like spelling on your turn, they're getting rid of cards, and then all of a sudden they're looking at their hand, they're like, oh, I have to use a card to play a card, I'm left with nothing, and you already have the kill, and they're in this weird predicament where you know what I mean? Not everybody is smart enough to see that, because sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to take damage here because I don't want to let my life total too low, because then when they combo me, so they pitch to AB, and then again they put themselves in the scenario where they don't have cards, and that's something that obviously like players that have played a lot of Kano or into a lot of Kano practice, they'll understand those things. And that's almost like what Peter's saying with Kano, is that you're going to catch. I mean, because out of 300 players, not all of those people know how to play against Kano. Like, they might have done it in Blitz, but CC's like a different animal with Kano. And you can just catch people, and like I said, you can just catch them in positions that they didn't expect to be in. They understand, like, okay, I pitched to AB, I don't die to the combo, but then they find themselves not attacking you, or they attack you for very little, and then it just allows you to set it up longer. And I think, Peter, you're skilled enough to play that way.
I think you buy a lot of time just inherently with like people not knowing how to play against it. I think people will either go like too aggressive or they'll be way too reserved, right?
Yeah,
and it just allows you to have more time, or you, even if you have less time, like they're just like, I'm not blocking anything. You're just like, okay, cool, like it's on me to set this up, and like it's on me to like be able to win top 20 cards in my deck, right? Yeah. But you're just kind of free rolling the game by yourself, and what deck is better at free rolling than Kano itself? Like,
this actually harkens back to the conversation we had before Wesley showed up, where we were saying that you and I were like, I'm like the spice guy. I'm like, check this combo out, watch this card.
Yeah.
I was about to drop the Pursuit of Knowledge and Dromai combo.
The Pursuit of Knowledge tech?
The Pursuit of Knowledge is good
for the mirror.
Yeah, and so that's like my play style, and then you're talking about Kano right now, and we talked about before Wesley showed up how Wesley's like, yo, I'm just gonna play this safe meta deck, and I'm just gonna be good with it. And like your Pro Tour 1, like you felt that the control Starvo.
Well, I play like the deck that I think gives me an edge. If I think like everyone is at similar skill level, I want to play a deck that can cheese and get like the edge over other people who are really good.
That's what I'm saying. So
which
like
is
your
still
pick,
like
you're not going to be like, oh, like you wouldn't like, oh, I think like it would have a hard time finding somebody like Azalea or Dory into a meta where you would be like again your PT1 was like, okay, Starvo was really good.
So I just built a deck that beat Starvo.
You just built a deck that beat Starvo, and it was the control version of Starvo. And then, I mean, obviously the Prism matchup is just like ridiculous, but and you did really well, and that's what we were talking about before you showed up. How and like even now, Peter's over here advocating to play Kano, and you're just like, well, why wouldn't you just play Oldhim if you're going to draft this well? Yeah. And it goes back to that conversation.
As the rare hunter, as the person who owns a CF Kano and not a Kano player, I think you should just play something like Oldhim. If you're going to 6-0 the draft, I think you're halfway to top 8. I think you just play a deck that, guarantees you like a good CC record. And it depends on what your goal is. Sometimes you are just Alex Dora and you're just really good at the deck, and you know that you're going to win no matter what.
Yeah.
Sometimes, your goal is like, I just want to top. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to play the best deck. I think right now I'm kind of in that camp. I'm actually deciding between those 3 decks. Like, I think our consensus right now is that the 3 best decks are probably Oldhim, Dromai, and Icelander.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, those 3 decks are pretty good, and I think it should be like a triangle between the 3. Or is Dromai actually beats the other 2, right? Supposedly. But bad against aggro.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
I honestly think Dromai, I think Icelander is actually supposed to be favored against Dromai. Like, the wildest thing is, like, you would think, but if you look at the Icelander decks that are winning, it's like, you're playing, like, red Ice Bolts, you're playing, like, red Aether Hails, and you're playing a lot more of, like, the red I'm dealing damage cards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're playing that kind of version, that can also side more, like, it's like the one that gives you, like, 4 Frostbites if you fuse this turn.
The Eisenhower.
Eisenhower. You can still...
This is a good segue.
This is like,
you
love that card.
You could still play that card versus the decks that you need to, and also have a lot of the burst that you need to get through with, like, Dromai. And it's weirdly enough, because I watched the Australian Nats, like, that Icelander was playing against Dromai in top 8, I believe, and I was like, oh man, that sucks for Icelander, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's Dromai, it's going to be auto loss. And then I, like, put it in the background, and then I came back, and it was, like, 10 minutes in, and, like, the Icelander had, like, Dromai to 2, and he was at, like, 30-something.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And then, so, I put it back, rewatched it, and I was just like, wow, like, this matchup's actually pretty good for Icelander, because Dromai can't pitch for anything. Like, Dromai's playing max 12 blues, right?
I think they play, like, 15 to 18.
No. Every list that I've seen is play like 12. Like,
but either way,
if you're playing like 15 to 8, like, you're playing 15 to 18, like, you don't have pressure. Like, you need the Reds to have pressure and make Ash. And if you have 15 to 18, like, yeah, you pitch more, but if you get, like, double blue, double red hand, you're probably not attacking me for anything.
The interesting part about that matchup with Dromai Islander is that
This guy.
that's what I'm gonna call her. What do you got? What do you Icelander?
Icelander.
Whatever. Islander to me.
Is
I butcher names. I love butchering names. I think that the deck composition of both will. So, like, we're talking about a general consensus of looking at the matchups, but, like, there's different versions of Dromai going out there. Some are still running Oasis, some aren't. Some are running Sand Cover, so forth. And then there's the Islanders that have they're solely on Frost Hex combo with the freezing point kill with the boots, and then some that are, you know, splashing poppers for the Dromai matchup. So there's, like, I think a general consensus is, like, I can see a matchup where Islanders in a lot of control, Islander is in a lot of control, and then I can also see matchups where you know, Dromai has just, like, a dominated board state, and the Arcane Barrier with the Ash Wings is there. There's nothing really going to happen. Don't care if my arsenal gets frozen because I've got, like, Ember Moss Senpai in hand, and I'm just going to push 8 at you. You know, I don't know. That's how I look at it, because I've been playing on Talishar with my own version of Islander.
You know, double blue Ember Moss sounds pretty good against 4 Frostbites.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, Ember Moss, like, I got eaten up by a red Ember Moss. I was like, man, I love that card, and I should be playing it. But I was like, I just wanted to practice, because I'm one of those players, I learn from playing with the deck, so that when I sit down against somebody, I'm like, oh, I know what that person's trying to do, because I know what the hands look like and so forth. So I think that's interesting. I don't think it's a triangle, because I'm just playing the deck that beats all 3 of those, and that's Phi. That's just my personal opinion. Like, I agree. I just, like, hey, whatever.
Spoiler, we love Phi.
Spoiler, yeah, we're
we
Phi.
Love Phi. Well, me and Sean love Phi. That's going to be my audible deck.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn the other 3
That's
decks.
just my deck. That's just my deck. I'm just going to play Phi until he Living Legends, or he's really bad. If he drops down to, like, tier 4, like Levia Azalea status, then different story. But, like, I don't see that happening just because of the way his gameplay looks. I think the funny part is that Wes and I will have conversations over my crazy card choices, and no matter how much reasoning Wes gives me, I'm just like, add a second copy of this card when I get home. Like, I'm just doing that. But I think Nationals. I think the thing about having a larger tournament versus these smaller nationals.
Finally, bring back to this.
That's what you know what I mean. When you have 300 something players, the meta is it's much less diverse than you would anticipate. You're gonna have like 60 Briars, 50 Viserais. You've taken out 110 players out of the thing. Then you're gonna have 80 Dromais and 68 Oldhams, and then there's gonna be a big chunk of the players that I can actually navigate Islander, right? Because she's not an easy hero to play with. She looks very mid if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so then you're gonna have like, you're gonna have like 3 Levias, maybe an Azalea. There's gonna be a Sir Bolton for sure.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna have the thing. So when you narrow it down, the meta isn't as diverse as it looks. Everybody's like, the Briars are like, okay, this is my game plan, and to Dromai, I just run her over. This is my, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't be surprised if we have 2 Briars in the top 8.
So that's what brings... Finally, we're back to this, because this has been simmering for a while for me. I've been thinking about this. You were talking about Rhinar and how it was like a good dark horse anti-meta pick. I think that's true, but it's like, what are the odds that you're going to run into the Oldhams that you want to play against? Like,
Correct.
What if
Yeah.
you run into the 100 Broomblades that are not the best matchup? Because I feel like, in general, Rhinar is not so good against the aggro decks that are outputting way too much damage. So I think the difference between like the high tiers and the mid tiers and low tiers is that the high tiers in general just have more consistent turns right now. They're just a little more powerful than some of the mid tiers and low tiers. And so like the Rhinar player can hit all the Oldhams, do 6-0 the draft and top 8, and that's totally fine. But it's also possible that you just run into like 2 or 3 Briars and you're just like, oh crap, I just lost my entire turn.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because it is true. Somebody posted this on Twitter. They're like, deck choice doesn't matter if you 0-3 your draft.
Yeah.
Like you spent all this time. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna run Rhinar because I think everyone's gonna be on Oldham and Dromai, and I'm gonna beat them. So I practice this. Maybe I have like a less than ideal percentage against Islander, and then you get into your draft and you pivot in the middle of a pack, and now you're running 2-3 cracked baubles. You're hoping to put this Phi deck together or this Dromai deck together, and then you just get run over by the best Phi deck that was drafted, the best Islander deck that was drafted, and then you're playing the O2, and you're just trying to salvage something, and then your deck's just not as good as their deck, and now you've looked at an O3, and then you're just walking into the CC bracket of the other O3 players, and you could just be like, oh, well, now there's no Oldhams here.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing, because this was like, okay, we'll go back to Magic. I used to do this with GPs. You could be playing a tier 2 deck, tier 1.5 deck, hoping to prey on a specific matchup, but when you lose your first round, now you're going to be playing into, it's good now, but like Merfolk. You're going to go get matched up against Merfolk. You're getting matched up against these other decks that have the same plan that you did, but you didn't practice against those decks, or you don't have a good matchup. And next thing you know, you've taken 2 losses, day 2, and then you're just trying to scrounge some Planeswalker points or whatever, you drop and go whatever. And that's the funny thing, because you have to win to get into the actual meta. And I think some people don't understand that. Like, you could be like, oh, I'm going to play Phi, but if I 0-3 my draft, I'm not going to see that. I'd have to do really well in the CC rounds and then the draft the next day to get back into the meta that I want to prey upon.
It was like U.S. Nationals last year, to where I brought my Dash deck, and I was like, yo, I'm going to beat every deck in this game besides like the crazy Briar list that won UK like Nats the week before, or like Sir Bolton, if anybody brings Bolton, right? And I start off my draft, I 3-0, it was great. I was like feeling top of the world, and like I was debating the night before with John, and I was like, do I just play this Lightning Briar deck or that I tested, or do I play mech that I've been on for the last 2 months that I feel is just the best deck in the format if I'm not playing against specifically this Lightning Briar deck or Sir Bolton, right? Because Bolton is just like randomly just like your worst matchup for no reason at all. And I'm like, I'm just gonna run mech. I feel comfortable with it. I feel like I don't believe, this is before we know that people switched as much.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that many people will switch. And maybe Briar's like 15% of the meta. Turned out to be like 27% of the meta that day because everybody just switched, right? And I threw on my draft. I sit down on my round 4 thing, and I think my opponent says Prism, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I'm going to hit the good matchup.
Yeah.
And start off 4-0 in the day. And then I'm like, okay, I'm playing Dash. And he goes, oh man, that's a good matchup for me. And I'm just like, this man's crazy if he thinks like Dash, like Prism's a good matchup into Dash. And he just like flips Sir Bolton. And I'm instantly just like, yeah, there's no way.
Yeah.
I was like, and I check I lose the game instantly, right? Like I just lose. Like the game was not close. And I go to, he just like combo bees on like turn 3, he gets to go first. Like it was just over. And I go on my phone, and you know what the first thing I see? Is meta breakdown from FAB.
Yeah.
And I'm straight malding that there's like, I think there's like 3 or 4 Boltons in the entire thing.
Them, yeah. One of them was our friend.
One is our friend that I know 2-1 his pod.
Yeah.
Because we were in the same pod. I threw it over my pod. And he's 2-1, so I can't play against him. So there's 3 other Boltons, like 2 or 3 Boltons live, right? So I get paired against one of them that also had a 3-0 his draft. And I was just like, my whole entire preparation just like throws out the window at that point, right?
This is sounding awfully a lot similar to this year's Nationals.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Oldham just eats everyone else's ass.
Yeah,
All the road decks.
Yeah.
That's true. Like,
that's the thing. The road decks. Sorry. Oh, my bad.
I
just messed it all up. That's okay. I can fix it. I kicked it with my foot. I think there's too much.
Welcome back to the cast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. No, I think Oldham takes some skill to play.
It does. I think blocking at the right moments, knowing when.
What is that?
Blocking.
Yeah.
Okay. But like understanding the moments of like keeping the arsenal versus keeping that extra card to whale and arsenal versus and giving up the arsenal, right? Like that's going to be your like compound movements. It is also like super hard to like understand the aggro side of Oldham because you present large numbers, but the relevant go-agains in that deck are very small, so you need to use Dominate. But inherently, when you use Dominate, your opponent can only block with 1 card, so they have at least a 3 to 4 card hand.
Yeah.
Which means that they could also have a big turn if you just you're like 8 Dominate, and you're like, cool, my opponent's at 32, he just go to 24, then he presents 20 back. He presented 8 versus 20. Which is also my fear because I've seen so many games of OG Bravo, aggro Oldhams, be in the front foot and have the on-hit effects early for like 4 to 5 turns, and somebody just full blocking the entire time. You have 1 turn that is subpar, and that is the last turn you attack.
Yep.
And I feel like that can happen a lot more than people expect if they are playing against a deck that is trying to be proactive as well. I think when you're playing against like Icelander or you're playing against Dromai, I don't think it's going to be as relevant if you miss a turn. But I think when you're playing against Briar, you're playing against Phi, you're playing against Kano, you're playing against Reinar, that want that extra turn of vulnerability to set up, be able to then punish you for you having a bad turn, I think that's really where you're going to get into the shaky situations of a deck that is super consistent, but also has its inconsistencies of being able to have an aggressive game plan, because realistically, if you look at the design space for Oldham, it's just a very sweaty control deck, and you're trying to play an aggro control deck when you don't have the resources that Briar has to be an aggro deck. So you're kind of in the middle of it.
I see what you're saying. I think aggro Oldham actually reminds me of mech in the sense that like you want to traditionally... The Matt Rogers mech was just mid-range, you have the pistols, and then once you set up some of your items, then you can start hitting them back, and then you trade way more efficiently. Mm-hmm. And then, like, when Chain came out, we're like, oh, crap, he just deals way more damage late game, you can't really give him that time. So then, in order to beat Chain, people started trying to go under Chain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the same thing that Ultimate is doing right now, where it's like, you need to beat these setup decks that are very popular, like Dromai and Icelander. So you have to go under them. Or like, as the meta shifts, Viserai will be building towards like the Rune Chant version. So you need to start being aggressive. You can't just sit back anymore. So Oldham no longer is that ultimate late game deck. Now it's like Dromai and Icelander. And I think it's kind of interesting in the design of Flesh and Blood. But yeah, I think Oldham is just like the perfect... it's like the perfect pro deck where it's like... I actually think it's like pretty easy to learn for the most part. Like very basic, fundamental.
It's easy to learn play pattern, but playing it well is a different story.
Yeah.
Like, because you find, like, I think if you were learning how to play Oldham and somebody recorded it, because if you get games recorded, I think you get being able to watch your gameplay,
Yeah.
having hindsight, obviously, but then you'd be like, oh man, I basically gave away 3 free damage by blocking this way, or one of the first mistakes I ever made playing Oldham was like pitching my blue block 3s for Crown to draw into a 2 block, and then be like, I just
Oldham just has a lot more room for you to make mistakes and still recover them.
Yeah.
You have a lot of agency in it.
Okay, so we've kind of touched on what this meta looks like over the discussion. It makes me wonder, what is your guys' comparison to what it is like now versus what it just was when Prism was around? Like, are you happier that Prism is gone from a meta perspective? And I know you like, or are you like, because some people are like, I just miss my girl, and we have a homie who foiled out his entire deck, and that was the only hero he played.
I mean, Prism was like the whale hero, right? Like, there's so many people that are like hard coping because like it's just like they probably spent like 3,000 to 5,000 like getting full art heralds, foiling the entire deck out, getting first ed foils. You got a cult for library. You keep going down the list, right?
Yeah.
Every judge promo for a year was Prism cards, like. And
now they're like $10 each.
Yeah. Like, it's just crazy, right? Like, the amount of sales that I've seen of like random Prism cards online has just gone up exponentially, right? And like they're cheaper, right? And obviously, the cards retired. On a more of like a meta standpoint, I like decks like Prism a lot more than like in metas than not. And I don't think we have that anymore. I think we're in like a really big like kind of control type like mid-range kind of format right now. You don't have bad matchups, but you don't have good matchups, right? In the top decks, you're playing a lot of like 52, maybe 55%. You're not playing a lot of like 70-30s.
So is that good or bad?
I think it's bad.
Why?
I personally think that the meta where you have a deck that is keeping a certain class in check is a lot better than having just like, as you see, like Oldham does not need to really get preyed on by a lot of decks right now, and they can just play whatever they want. You can main board cards versus aggro because you can't get punished for it. You can have your aggressive plan on the sideboard because you don't have to allocate cards to like this terrible matchup that you have. You don't have to
run time skippers. Like, I don't have to run time skippers to pop auras anymore. Like.
Oldham was already a tier 1 deck when you had an auto loss in the format. And you're taking your auto loss in the format completely out, and it's just going to keep being in tier 1 deck. It just gets to be a better tier 1 deck without this instant loss. I feel like those decks are fine metas when they also have instant losses to aggro. Right? A metagame called deck, I feel, is a lot more impactful than just a deck that is consistent. Because, as you see, like, Chain was... Starvo was just by far the best deck, right? But, like, Chain historically was very good at the start. Didn't really win anything for a long time. Won PT1, came up at a couple Nationals, and then eventually retired because it was good, like, at the Road to Nationals and the ProQuest seasons. Prism was, like, historically good, but it was historically good because it preyed on decks like Guardian, which largely have been one of the best decks in the format for... 2 years, like Prism was going to be that deck that is going to get retired because it is good metagame call versus the decks that are always going to be good, which is going to be the control decks.
So you think that's bad? What about you, Wesley?
I am glad that I can finally binder all my pretty Prism cards, but I'm really sad because I played Fi and now I just lost like 12% meta share. That sucks. I think actually this is pretty good for the meta in the sense that like I think more closer matchups makes for more fun flesh and blood games, but also I think like now there's a lot more heroes that are viable, and so this meta feels like you can play like 8 or 9 different decks and they're all totally fine. Dorinthia is back. I think like Kano and Icelander gains a lot from this. There's just more decks in the meta, and overall less polarizing matchups feels better.
Yeah, that's funny you say about Kano and Icelander because I played Kano at one of our RTNs. And I was just like,
I remember that one.
And I was just like, Peter, how do you beat this Prism matchup? Like, he's like, I don't know, I just get lucky. So now I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Like, if I do want to pick up Kano and play it, like, I don't have to worry about walking into this guy that's going to be like, War Tune Herald for 7, War Tune Herald for 7, and just, like, present half my life total for 2 resources.
Is not so great for you either.
No, yeah, but I just, like, that feeling of sitting down, of knowing that these heralds, like, it was a twofold. Like, the way Prism's played was the heralds attacking and presenting soul that were going to save them a life in a soul shield was like a twofold. Where Dromai doesn't... she has the arcane barrier with the little ash wings.
All her cards are red?
But, yeah.
All her cards are red.
So that's the difference.
It doesn't matter if you have AB6 when you can pitch for it.
Yeah. So, I think that I'm happy Prism's gone. From a personal standpoint, I loved Prism, but my version of Prism was never good enough. I really liked aggro Prism. Like, I liked the big...
It's really funny. You liked Spears of Sorority, but now it's good in Dromai, but you're not playing Dromai.
I've always liked... that's true. That's fine.
I hated Prism. I hated playing against Prism, right? It was one of the matchups that, like, traditionally was good when I played Chain, but I always just hated playing against it, right? But I think, on a meta standpoint, I think it was necessary. But that's like the array of, like, decks that I like playing, that I think you should try to find the deck that is going to win 70% of the time versus the top decks and snipe it, because that's not how you're win traditionally, right?
Yeah.
If I'm playing a strictly CC, it's like Kano top ending the PT1. It realized that you had a, like, 70-80% into playing in Starvo, and if Starvo's 50% of the meta, you're probably already doing well, you know? You have to try not to get beat by Prism, which is the second most played deck, or second or third most played deck, but you have an instant loss versus 15% of the meta, but you have an instant win versus 50% of the meta. Like, and then you have probably an even matchup versus 35%. Like, I think those decks are something that I'd rather be on than shy away from.
Okay.
I think it's just easier to... I guess last thought. Like, I just think it's easier to interact with something like Guardian, where, like, you can play defense reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not possible to interact with something like Prism, because gaining action points is a lot harder than just having something like Go Again to clear the dragons, right? And I think, like, against Oldhim and Bravo, if you really want to beat them, you can play cards like Unmovable.
Mm-hmm.
There's, like, the good aggro decks have ways to overcome one stumble turn from either of the Guardians. And I think right now, like, I feel like Dromai and Icelander have a good matchup against Oldhim. So I feel like, the matchups are a lot closer, and it feels like usually as the better player, you will win more often, rather than just having, like, unwinnable matchups.
Yeah, and, I think any game feels bad when you sit down and you're like, no matter how hard I try against this deck, I just can't win this. Because for new players, now we're all competitive grinders, we go to tournaments, we're all traveling to North Carolina.
We're just a collector.
You're just a rare hunter, yeah. But for new players that come in, they're like, oh, I really like this hero.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, I've never played against Prism. And they're like, oh, yeah, this matchup's unwinnable for you. And they're like, what do you mean? And like, just watch. Like, sit down with Oldhim or Guardian and play against Prism and just watch how there's... You might even feel like you're ahead. You're like, oh, I'm winning. I'm doing good. And next thing you know, there are 7 auras on the board, 3 spectral shields. They're blocking out. They're hitting you with 1 herald to pitch a yellow, and then their Spears of Sorority now has 5 counters on it, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, and it's just like, wait, what? And that, to me, I didn't like that as a play experience for players that are learning the game. But once, as a competitive player, I'm just like, I'm playing Levia. I should theoretically beat Prism, and then I roll Scab Skins on a 1, crack the gloves, roll 1, and it's like, okay, let's just stop playing this.
I've been there, Sean. I've been there.
You were there with me when that happened.
I've been there.
And it's just like, so like I said, I'm happy to see Prism gone for that reason, because it did create quite a bit of negative play experience.
I think Spectre was just a mechanic that shouldn't have existed. I think it's fine. I just think it was too soon for a mechanic like that.
Yeah.
I think there's not enough cards that give extra action points in current Flesh and Blood, so Spectre was just too good. I think, like, say in, like, 3 years, right, there's, like, you have, like, 9+ cards that give an extra action point that are, like, actually viable that you would want to play in the deck. I think Spectre is a fine mechanic, right? Because now people, I mean, people were playing 6 Lead the Charge. Like, Lead the Charge is the only card pretty much in the game, besides, like, Spellbound Creepers, that allowed you to get an extra action point. Like, that shouldn't be your only card that can do something versus them, right? Also, you're polarized into playing a lot of poppers because of their, like, Phantasm Mechanic. There's just a lot of slots for that deck, right?
Yeah, there's specifically your deck had to have a certain game plan into Prism that may or may not work. Like, I played into a Prism one time where I had Lead the Charge and a Time Snap Potion, and they still just double aura'd 4 turns in a row. And it's like...
And you lose again? You're just like, okay.
And that was Andrew in California, and he was like, bro, this is not... And I was like, hey, it happens sometimes.
It's the game,
I think the 27 auras was the problem. Like, when they printed the...
Yeah, when they printed the
new blue ones?
Yeah. The four new blue ones. That might have been just too much.
Too much, yeah. Okay, so I know you guys are both gonna like this. So you guys, how do you guys feel about not getting a cold foil Kano at the Nationals?
Nothing against SCG or FAB, but like, come on, what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
Like, what am I getting to qualify for Nationals, right? Like, I don't know what are we getting a playmat?
You get a box. You get a box. You get an assemble box.
We're getting a cardboard box.
Yep, big one.
That's not like, that's 0 resale value.
I think,
right?
For some context, last year, what did we get?
We got a mat, right? And we got a Cold Foil Hero. Mm-hmm. And did we give us sleeves last year?
No, I don't think they started doing the sleeves yet. But last year we got that's when the Tails heroes first started coming out.
Yeah.
If you were unlucky, you also managed to get one of the
Monarch
heroes.
ones.
Yeah.
I remember opening. I think I opened Briar. Yeah. And then it was like somebody offered me like $250 at the venue, and I was just like, hell yeah! Like, that's my flight home. You know, like.
I think that's really a good incentive.
I think we went from that, which is like, the opportunity cost of FAB doing that is like so low, right? Like, how much money are they really spending, like, printing a promo and putting a cold foil gloss or like on top of it? Mm-hmm. Very low opportunity cost, right? So the fact that I don't get a promo that you would think would just be given to national players,
which I think they've given at the first nationals, in Sydney and in Australia and New Zealand as well.
If Cold Foil Kano, like Cold Foil Young Kano, is going to be your national incentive for U.S. Nationals for a promo, to like go to this event, why is it only for ticketed calling and go against side event packages, right? Yeah, that is your main promo that you are giving out for that weekend, and you're not giving out to the main event, which is...
Okay, so I'm going to present it from a business perspective, and I don't know if this information is true.
Yeah.
I'm just speculating.
Well, don't get us canceled before our first episode.
I'm just speculating here. The idea that SEG makes their money off of not the national event, but rather the calling and the side event, incentivizes them to give the better reward to drive sales towards those events. Mm-hmm. Why would I give this reward to nationals players who are just going to be playing a 3-day tournament or 2-day tournament and then top 8 on the 3rd day, and take away from what's driving my pocketbook? Mm-hmm. Like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like that's a forced tournament that they have to run versus the calling. And I'm just looking at it from a business perspective. I think they're trying to incentivize people playing in the thing that makes them money.
I think the interesting thing is the other nationals this year also do not get any cold foil promos. And this, I feel like, maybe is short-sighted from LSS. I feel like players really enjoyed getting the cold foil promos, so I feel like it feels bad that, there is a cold foil promo for U.S. Nationals apparently, but it's actually just for the calling.
Yeah.
And I think this promo will actually be worth quite a bit because I haven't seen any announcements for any other event getting this cold foil Kano, and there's also 3 other Arcane Rising young heroes that don't have the cold foil treatment.
Yeah.
So we don't know if they're going to do this Kano prize or promo again for other events.
Yeah. It could be a limited one-time thing.
Yeah. It's really unfair for like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like, imagine they just said cold foil Kano was going, like, the Arcane Rising Cold Full Young Heroes were given out for Nationals this year, for every single Nationals. How much better is that going to be, right? It's you're getting a 1-4 to hit the, like, say you won one of the young Cold Full Heroes. It's like one of the only sets that doesn't have Cold Full Young Heroes too, right?
Yep.
I think it's actually just Arcane at this point because we got the young ones for WTR. Like, we didn't get to go by to Arcane when it got out of print, right? Which I thought we would also get. It was random. So you're just giving one of them away for a random calling that's only in the U.S. So
I think that's the bigger problem.
You're
than the Nationals.
Yeah, you're like limiting your market to amount of people. Like how?
What if they're just extras from like those New Zealand Nationals? Because the Cold Full Volcano was given out.
No, there was no young. This is the first time.
This is the first time.
This is the first time.
Okay, that was my understanding. My thinking was like, was it possible that these were like extra copies from a previous thing that there's like, I'll give 300.
It's the first time it's getting printed, and it's giving to the opportunity cost to like everywhere else. Like you're driving market, and like Flesh and Blood is going to be one of the games that is going to be one of the biggest games in the world, like top 4, top 5.
It's just one best game.
Yeah, one best game. It is like sales wise, like top 4, top 5 in the world. That is going to be largely in Europe and New Zealand and Australia. That is driving your sales. Like it's one of the biggest games in the world. That North America isn't your. It is currently, but is trending towards not being your best sell of the game. And you're just limiting it to like such a small region when like APAC is like super hard to get this promo. You're not giving it to like all nationals.
Collectors having this 500 copies of this specific thing does keep the collectability aspect of Flesh and Blood alive.
That's why you split into the 4.
Like I just don't get why you couldn't give out like an extra 375 copies to the Nationals.
Another context thing is you can only get it by buying one of the packages. I believe the constructed package, the Fable package, was $150. And then the
side event
package is like $130.
Yeah.
And so you can only get this cold foil if you purchase one of these packages. So for me, being the rare hunter, I had to get this package, even though hopefully I don't have to participate in the calling, right?
He's gonna make me pick up his package stuff while he's playing in the day 2.
Because think about it, like I do well day 1 of Nationals and I make day 2. What package is good for me at that point? Like there's no package for me to buy for the like say I just day 2 Nationals, I top 64, I top 32, right? You couldn't give me a package. Like I'm gonna play the Battle Hardened on Sunday then if I am not top 8ing Nationals, right? Give me your alternative. Give me like a $90 package that gives me entry into Battle Hardened and
with the Cold Full Volcano,
right?
You're gonna buy that,
Like
I lose out on too much money that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a bit. I feel like, and we don't know, but like there might be a level between the tournament organizers and LSS that says that for them to do whatever, like, and we don't know because let's be honest, SCG just had a tournament where there was like 19 players in the command zone, less than 200 people in a modern tournament, and they're forking out money to run another card games events. There's got to be some incentive because you're gonna have 300 players in Nationals, and you're probably gonna have minimum 500 players at the calling.
I was kind of sad about it because we went to Calling Indy, which was ran by SUG, like a couple months ago, right? And half of the room was playing Magic, and the other half was playing Flesh and Blood, and they had the vendors in the middle. I thought it went really smoothly. I didn't really see people yelling at each other. Like I think Magic and Flesh and Blood players both like respect each other. It's not like putting Magic players in front of Yu-Gi-Oh players like you're just gonna fight. Like
or Flesh and Blood players and Yu-Gi-Oh players. We used to have a local incident.
That one was crazy. That I don't know if that dude should be in our locals anymore. But or thinking about like, but you put both of them on both sides and you put the vendors in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And it was fine. I didn't hear of any fights. I didn't hear of like anything like wrong about it. And I feel like you're just the opportunity cost of you running an event that went smoothly like that, where multiple sides, multiple games were happy about it, and then now you're running a singular event and you're just fumbling the bag. Maybe not fumbling the bag, but you're just fumbling something that you already had a good image from that event.
It feels
from that event, and then you're just like totally killing your image on another event, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of people that I've talked to, like I tweeted about it, the amount I've talked to online. I don't think there's one. I think there was one person that was like, "Well, I saw it from SCG's perspective and stuff. I think it's fine for you to spend an extra $150." And I was just like, "You're fucking crazy!" Like,
yeah.
Like, there's no reason for me to pay for an event that I can't participate in if I make day 2 of nationals that I'm not going to get compensation for if I will. Like, I'm not using my Go Again package, my limited
again, it's like
vouchers.
it's a little bit of greed because
they're
encouraging you to buy a $150 package or a $130.
I'm basically paying $150 for a Kofa Kano, which if I wanted
just makes it so expensive on top of it being so
rare. Yeah,
and then you give me the tickets.
It's just,
and then I hit the prize wall,
I
pull the pack, and then we get the money pack.
Yeah,
get that.
He did pull.
I didn't pull the Aya Look,
and I pulled Corsham at last year's nationals.
And then it was
so lucky.
The Battle Harden of PT2 didn't have any prices besides top 8. And remember, we had PT1, the Battle Harden, and like both of us went 8-2, and it was like 800 tickets. I got like a box. We got a box that we opened in our hotel room. I think I got like some like Aether Wildfire, and then I hit an eye, right? Like that is the experience that I want these Battle Harden players and these players that are buying those packages to get, and you're just
not giving them
how much opportunity cost are you losing to just be greedy and not give you the extra prize support when how many people am I realistically looking at a prize wall at these events?
I want to save that topic, like prize support, and like the way I want to save that for a future episode because I have some very strong feelings about how prize support is structured and given out at certain events and locations. So I want to move on. What deck are you playing?
Wait, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
No,
fool.
The package is like there's only 500 of the Fable package, and there's 30 of each of the Go Again package. Mm-hmm. What really sucks is we don't plan on attending the calling, hopefully, because we day 2, and then we get like 3 side event tickets. We don't have time to play it. I noticed that in the last 2 or 3 events that we've been to, so like the PTs, and this nationals, I think you just don't have time to participate in the side events if you're playing in
the main
events.
Yeah. Because even if you do horribly on day 1 and you do play in the calling, like if you do horrible and then you play in the calling and you also do horrible, I think you're like, all right, I want to go enjoy the city I visited.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I've had a bad weekend. Let me just like, you're not going to like, oh, I can't wait to do this 3 p.m. Tales of Aria draft.
Yes, exactly.
Like I've drafted the crap out of Tales of Aria or whatever.
It's like, honestly, if like say
terrible value.
Yeah, it's terrible value. Like say you bum out. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's just
it's bad.
It's just bad.
Okay, so decks that you're playing for nationals.
Wesley.
We know he audibles to Phi if he doesn't like it.
Well, so I'm trying to learn Icelander, Ultim, and Dromai right now.
Okay.
I think those 3 decks are really good. Actually, originally I was thinking of playing almost the same thing that Tarek was suggesting, which is Ultim, Dromai, and Dash. But then I realized I just don't really... I played a lot of Dash in Crucible meta, so I don't really enjoy playing her as much anymore. I feel like Boost is just a really boring mechanic. Every card is nearly the same. I do think Maximum Velocity is pretty cool, that now it's like a lot more playable.
Yep.
But overall, I think I'm kind of just bored of the hero.
What is the... I never remember this card. Isn't there a boost card that... Magnetic
Shockwave.
Magnetic Shockwave. Yeah. That card, I want to see that card more.
It sucks because it doesn't boost.
Yeah, no, I know, but like I love that card exists.
If that card, it's like a payoff, but like how good is the payoff of like making all of your opponent's equipment block is like not that good.
Yeah,
right?
So like, the amount of work for the payoff.
The only time that matters if you're playing against a hero that has like 4 things that just like pop if you block with it, right? And like I can't say a hero that has that, like maybe like
Phi runs 3.
Lexi killing like New Horizon. I mean like Phi, but like you always have the 0 to always block with first.
True.
So it's like you're like wasting one, like, you know, what is it? What's the 0 mana one that
the T-Bone?
T-Bone. Yeah. Like you're playing a T-Bone, they block with their 0, and you're like, cool, that's fun. Yeah. And then like maybe you finish with it, and then like, yo, you get him, you know, you like And
you could go T-Bone, Magnetic, and that would get all 4.
Yeah, you get all 4, and that's a cool play, right? Don't get me wrong. But, like, how many times is that happening, right?
Yeah.
It's just the reward sucks now, especially with, like, the Skeleton Band. I feel like that was the only one that really was worth it. Maybe Courage in Saber Bolton.
Yeah.
But I think in this meta...
You're not getting rewarded.
Surprisingly, T-Bone just not so great.
Okay, all right, so you got...
What up?
You got the top 3. Peter, we know, is on Kano.
I think I'm just locked in Kano. I don't think I would audible play like any deck in the format. Maybe Briar if like
What up, guys?
I randomly just like lost like 15 to 20 games. I think I would just audible to Briar, but like I think it's pretty much locked on Kano at this point. I think my plan is very good.
I'm not playing in Nationals.
But if you were,
our buddy took my spot. I got 9th.
Yeah. If you were,
I would be playing Fi. I just think Fi is the best deck. I think. I just, in my experience, playing against all the decks, there are bad matchups, but if you know how to navigate them, you can steal victories from those. Mm-hmm. And then I think you're good into Oldham. I personally think you're good into Oldham. Dromai is a buy, and I don't see how Islander beats a skilled 5-player. Like, I just don't see how they
We're
do
going to test that today.
Yeah.
That's going to be why I play Icelander or not.
Yep.
So, and then last question. Does anyone got any sexy spice for Nationals? When I say spice, I'm talking about my level of spice, not Tariq saying spicy Dromai running 2 copies of Tome. Like Whipty Doodah, bro, you're running Chromai, you get an action point. Mm-hmm. You're playing high impact or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's basically what the play is, and then you that's to me is not spice. Like Pursuit of Knowledge and the Dromai mirror seems cool. Like that's cool. Something that's spicy.
I saw that one was cool. I wasn't really thinking. I mean, maybe if you were testing Dromai that much, I heard the mirror matches are like super fun. So that's definitely something that
I want to play Dromai because everyone says it's fun.
It's definitely fun.
Dragons.
It's definitely fun.
So does anyone have any spice? Like anything that you think is, like me, I'm gonna say it. Like I think Thaw is a super underrated card in Fi. I love it. Also take the tempo. That would be, and that's not even, to me, it's not even spicy because they're good cards. They're not like
so bad cards.
They're not bad cards that
I know you were talking about Pummel and Dromai. Tell me more about that.
The one of Pummel and Dromai is funny because
with 6 targets in the entire deck,
and you're running Flamescale Furnace, and the opponent may not see that you can double pitch for like Ember Maw or Erase Face. And then you have 1 red card in hand, Pummel and Arsenal, and they're just like, oh, okay, no big deal. And then you can pitch to activate Flamescale, get another Ash, and then Pummel. Seems really cool because once you've done it, they're going to be playing around other Pummels that aren't there.
That's some Pummel Spice Latte.
You know what I mean? Pummel Spice Latte. I love that. Pummel's a good card.
I do think if you get hit by the 1-of Pummel in like Dromai, I think you have to concede at that point.
You're probably at the 0-3 table already, so it's okay.
I think you're at the 0-3 table. It's fine to concede and go home.
Wasn't that, what's funny that we talk about this is that remember in the early meta when the heroes first came out, there was that Pummel Islander list. Like it was just like running Frost Fangs and it was like
I was so confused by it. I was like, how is this deck winning? And like I think I watched like a deck tech video on it, and then like I think they had like gameplay with it, and I just watched the deck play, and I was like, somebody won with this.
Yeah, because they side in for Null Rune.
I was like,
and they don't have equipment to block. You're pummeling over the top. You've got the tap. It was kind of funny, but it reminds me like if you lose to that deck, like you said, you're probably at the 0-3 table. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You're 0-4 now.
You're 0-4.
You're 0-4 out of the cup.
You have to tell all the homies. What did you lose to? I lost a Pummel Islander. Like I 0-3'd my draft. Decided to stay in.
Like although that might be like the confidence boost that your friends need, right? Like say they're like they start 3-0 in their draft, and then they lose the first round, and they're like 3-1, and they're feeling bad and stuff like that. And like you walk over and they're just, oh man, how did I lost, man? How did you do? And you're like, dude, I got pummeled by Dromai or pummeled by Icelander. I think my mood is like instantly better because I lost my round, but I can't get worse than that.
Correct.
Right? Like
down horrible.
Like like I might be down bad,
break
but
out
you're
the
down
little violin. Yeah, break it out, buddy, because here comes the sob story.
Yeah, but Wesley, what is your card? You know,
I do have one, but I can't spoil it for now because I might play something like
What
that.
was up
Not at nationals.
Oh, okay.
Not at nationals. So maybe like Worlds or something. I have something that I want to try, but I don't know if it's any good.
Okay.
I do think that a deck to watch out for is really just the Weather Vane.
Yeah, Eisenhower Weather.
I think there's 3 in the top 8 of Australian Nats, and I think the rest of the world. I think the people playing nationals right now this weekend maybe on it, but I think the rest of the world is behind on the meta, and I think that is the better Icelander build.
So the thing about that, I want to say, a lot of people are saying that, like, oh, you don't want to be playing Frost Hex in certain matchups, but these people are playing Frost Hex because what they're doing is they're setting up 1 or 2 Frost Hexes and then hitting them with the Freezing Point Eisenhower Weather Vane, and now all of a sudden you have 2 Frost Hexes, 4 Frostbites. They are hitting you for like 9 Arcane, and they are going to arsenal a blue ice card that they fused with that is going to stop your first play. So if you are able to get rid of those Frostbites, it's going to be gone. And if not, those Frost Hexes are going to deal even more damage, which I think is just crippling. So that's... Like, click, and subscribe. I can't believe I'm saying that, dude. I can't believe it. If you see me in person, I give you permission to slap me. You might get your ass kicked. You might get your ass kicked because I can fight. But I can't believe I'm saying like, click, and subscribe.
Dude, definitely subscribe. Like, it's always fun.
When is this coming out?
I don't know.
I'll know when I get slapped.
Thank you for Wesley, or
yeah, thanks for
Rare
Hunter,
for coming out, for this episode.
Stay tuned for next episode. I'm Sean.
I'm Peter.
This is Pummel Spice Latte.